Hello, so this is a little tutorial for those of you who want to make scrub hats. I am using the pattern that we're using in the Chichester Scrubs group, and you can find that by going onto their Facebook page and clicking on announcements, and then it's this post here, and there's a link here to a Dropbox which has, if I can do a close up, a pattern which you print off and this explanation here. Now this explanation is pretty good, but this is just if you are new to sewing or you're finding it confusing or complicated, then it's to help you with that. So I've printed out my pattern pieces and I have joined them together, so the B star star goes with B star star, B star goes with B star. So I've stuck them together, and then I also have this piece, which is the top piece, and one of the ladies put a bit of information about people with big hair, that they were finding this, there wasn't enough room to get their hair in, so she suggested adding a 3-inch piece in the middle, which you then make a fold for. So I have added I cut a 4-inch piece and then given myself like a half-inch overlap, and then I've marked the centre line, and then I've just folded my pieces in, and that's what I'm going to do with my hat. So you don't have to make it with this fold in the centre. It's completely fine if you just decide to cut it out as it is and use it. On this tutorial I will put where you can skip to if you don't want to do all this gubbins, because it does add quite a lot of extra time in, but if you want to give it a go, give it a go. So I've just pressed my fabric out. It's really important to do this. This is the lining that I've chosen. I've matched my selvages together here because in theory they're the straightest part, and then I've just ironed away and given myself a really nice crisp fold here. Now the problem with this fabric is whoever cut it out last left a wiggly edge, so we have to bear that in mind in a minute. I'm just getting my top fabric, which I've also ironed, and I've got to match that, its crisp edge to the other one's crisp edge. And then I'm going to bring this down as far as I can to where there's 4 pieces of fabric. So down here, what's happened is when it's been cut before, this side isn't straight. So I'm just putting my top fabric on in a best fit. So if you have a look at this pattern, it says fold in fabric, and that means you want to put this bit along the fold in your fabric. So line that up, and the other thing about this pattern is the seam allowance is included, so you don't need to allow any seam allowance. So you can just put this right to the very edge, but as I said a minute ago, you want to make sure that it's at the very edge of your smallest edge, if you see what I mean, if that makes any sense. So basically you don't want to lose any of your fabric, because if I cut this and put this down here, which hopefully you can see, then I would lose, I wouldn't have enough. So I just want to make sure it lines up nicely, and then So this is all beautifully pinned, and as you can see here, it's pinned through the 2 pieces of fabric, and that's on the fold of each piece of fabric, okay? So when I cut it out, I'm just going to follow the whole line all the way around, and as I said, you don't need to leave any seam allowance. Okay, so I've pinned this onto here, and you only need 1 of these, so I've only pinned it through 1. So I've cut round my pattern onto my fabric, and now I want to mark through some information. Now normally I would use some tracing paper. This is not obviously college tracing paper, this is dressmaker's tracing paper, and a tracing wheel. And normally what that does is you draw along the line with the wheel and it transfers the information onto the back, but this is a light colour, this is a light colour, it's not going to show up. So because my normal tracing way isn't going to work, instead what I'm going to do is put pins sort of in useful spots along the lines that I want to trace. Now basically I want to pin, I want a line along here, I need a line along here, and I need a line in the middle. So this line is the original, where I cut the original pattern in half, because I need to know where these bits are folding to. Okay, so I'm going to pin them all and then I'll show you what to do. So I've pinned along these two lines on the centre line. So now when I turn it over, I've got some pins here and I've got black pins here. So what I need to do next is take my tailor's chalk or my pencil and just mark where the pins are. Well, I don't know if you can see that, but I can, and I can see my 3 lines that I need. And then I'm just going to take a ruler or a straight edge and draw a line along each of them. So first things first, I have folded the top of the hat in half, and I'm just ironing along the centre there, just going to make it a bit easier for me in a minute. And then the next thing I'm going to do, this is a flower top tip, you don't have to do it. I'm just putting 3 pins in where the line is, and then I'm going to use these to help me fold this back. So I know where I'm ironing to. So I've got a really nice crisp fold, and I've done the same on this side. Okay. And so the final step of this is I'm just going to fold my lovely folded edge into my centre. Okay, so I've got a really nice crisp line here, that's really easy to use. And I can see where my centre is because I pressed that. Just press it down again, press, press, press. And the same on the other side. So can you see it's now the shape of the original top of the hat? So I'm just going to take the pins out that I used to show me where to press. I have done it on the other side. And then more pinning. I'm going to pin it down at the bottom. And at the top. And I'm going to take my sewing machine and I'm just going to tack down along here and along here to keep it in place. It's much easier than leaving these pins in. You could hand tack it if you want to, it's up to you, but it just means you've not got these pins which will become annoying later. So now I've got the top of my hat, piece A, and I want to hem this bottom bit here. So you can see the top bit is nice and round and the bottom bit is flat. And this needs to, you're taking it up sort of 2 centimetres, but you want to turn the hem once at 1 centimetre and turn it again another centimetre, so the whole thing comes up 2 centimetres. And you can pin that and you can mark it, but I have a cheeky little hint slash tip. So what I've done is I've just sewn a line all the way along here, 1 centimetre, 1 metre, that'd be gigantic, 1 centimetre along, and I'm going to use that as a guideline for when I press. And while I'm doing this, I should point out that the pleat needs to be on the inside so that it's flat on the outside. I hope that makes sense. So the box bit of the pleat is at the back, inside. So yeah, so I've pressed along here, which was 1 centimetre, and then I just turn it again. And because I've got a nice straight press line, I can feel where the centimetre is. I have to say, I find this really, really useful if you need to take up a lot of stuff. You know, if you're trying to take up the hem of a skirt 1 centimetre all round, if you do that, it's so much quicker. So I now know that this is 2 centimetres. And then I'm just going to sew along here on the edge. So I've got my long piece B, which I had in half. And now I'm going to pin it right sides together. And also I need to transfer some information onto my pattern piece. Now you can do this by marking it. That's absolutely fine if you want to do that. When I made this for myself, I just pinned it and it was fine. Because what we want to do is to leave some of this section open. So I've got my pattern piece, and I can see this is you sew to here. So I'm going to make a little mark, sew it, and then you just need to do the same on this side. So just flip it over. Find your mark. I know it's near here. I'm just going to fold it. I know my mark's there. To be fair, if you go over, you can just unpick it. It's not going to be the end of the world. So there we go. So now what I need to do is sew from here all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. Back round and up to here, leaving this part open. So we better do that. So as I said, the seam allowance for this is 1 centimetre, and on my Delightful Sewing machine I've got these grooves, and they each mark out, I think it's 1/2 centimetre, yeah. So from my needle to 1 centimetre, very helpfully, is this groove. So I can use this groove to follow as a guideline as I go along. So I'm going to start at the start of my opening, where I'm leaving this bit open, and I'm going to sew all the way around, leaving it with 1 centimetre's worth in from the edge, and I'm not going to forget to anchor. So you go forward and backwards and keep going, and I'll see you at the end. So I have sewn all the way around from here all the way, and I've left my top open. So the next stage is to turn the bit that you've just sewn round, right way round. And the thing you need to do is to cut your corners off. This will make sure that you have a nice neat edge. So if you can get as close to the stitching as you dare without actually cutting the stitching, because then the whole thing unravels, that would be good. And if you want to, you can just trim that bit down, because, you know, ain't nobody going to see that bit. So the way I do my bagging out is I like to get a bit of it near the front, near the opening, and push it through a bit, like that. And then I get my chopstick and just shove that in and use that to push the fabric through to the end. Sometimes you get a bit stuck, that's okay. Just get your hand in, pull a bit. Just be thankful we're not doing really, really skinny bits. Okay, and then you can use your chopstick, as you can see, to push the ends out. And they look quite nice and square, don't they? And now I'm going to attach the crown to the rest of the hat. This is the right side of the outer fabric. I pressed the tail ends of these as well. And I'm going to place the right side of the top of this fabric, and that should be your centre of that. And I've still got a press mark where I pressed this, so I know where the centre of this is. But if you need to, just fold the fabric in half and find the centre of it again. Perhaps if your pins are on the right side. And then I'm just going to pin here. Now, obviously I'm going to pin this part of my hat into this part here, and they're not the same shape. So it will require a little bit of moving around. And I'm only pinning one piece of cloth to one piece of cloth. This part I am leaving free, because later on that's going to hide all the nasty bits. So as you can see, I'm having to move my crown around to fit in with the other part. And I think it's best to go from the centre outwards and then from the centre out to the other side, because to my mind it's more important that the middle parts match up. When you get to the end, if they're a bit off, it won't matter. It's going to be at the back of someone's head. So you pin all the way along to the edge of your crown that you've just hemmed, and you do the same for the other side, and then we're going to sew it. So I'm now going to sew this on, but I'm going to sew from the centre outwards on both sides. It just means that I'm not going to end up with any baggy bits, hopefully, in the middle. Now, again, to start off forwards and backwards. Now, as I said when we were pinning this, trying to sew a sort of round shape onto a sort of almost flat shape is not the easiest. So this way round, I'm doing the crown up, and actually what you will probably find is that it's easier the other way round in a minute. But sew all the way along to the bottom bit here and anchor it there. So I have sewn all around the edge, and the next step is we want to hide all these nasty edges, which you might be able to see, under all of this. So this is the inside. So what I want to do is take my edge here and just fold it over, and I'm going to pin it. And I'm just going to follow that around. Now, you might find that you need to put some pins in here. You might find you want to tack in here. You might find that you're fine and you're not worried about it. That whatever works for you is fine. Don't stress yourselves. But what you don't want to do is get too like a massive chunk. Like, say I just go, oh, turn that over, and then pin it up there, because you're going to end up, this bit's all going to go wrong. So you want to try and make this as flat as you possibly can, whilst also turning it under and pinning it. But remember, this turning should be about 1 centimetre. So as long as you turn it under about 1 centimetre, you should be okay. You shouldn't be too far off. So I'm going to just do that all the way around. And you can, if you are feeling not very confident on your sewing machine, you can easily hand stitch this with a slip stitch, but I'm going to top stitch mine, and I will show you that in a minute. So as we found before, I'm going to sew it with the sort of flat side on the top, because that's easiest. And I'm going to be top stitching, and to make sure it looks nice, I'm going to move the position of the needle across to the edge here, so I'm sewing quite close to the edge, but I'm still using all of my foot so that the fabric behaves itself. And as I go along, if I notice that it's coming untucked, I'm just going to tuck it under. Just take it as gently as you like, giving yourself time to correct it, make it look nice. So this is my lovely completed hat. Hurrah! Now you can just stop there, but somebody else suggested that maybe we should put some buttons in as ear savers. So what you want to do is fold your hat in half, and then you want to measure down about 5 inches from the centre front, and I think probably, I don't know, about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches from the edge. So that's where I'm going to put my button. Now the types of buttons you want, I've got a massive odd collection, but they want to be at least 1 inch or close to 1 inch in diameter. These are just under, there's about 3/4, they're probably alright. These are massive, they're just over 1 inch, because you want to make sure that when the elastic's going over, it will stay in place and not pop out. So to sew on my buttons, I'm going to use button thread. You might not have button thread at home. You might have just normal cotton. So you can do what I've done here, which is use quadruple thread. What you do is you put one lot of thread through the eye of the needle and then a second lot of thread through the eye of the needle like this, and then you just tie a knot in the end, and that's really nice and strong, and it's going to mean you don't have to do as many stitches. Okay, so I've just tied a knot in the end and sewn a stitch through, and now I'm going to sew my button on. And I want to leave a little bit of what is delightfully known as shank, because I want it to be easy for them to get the elastic over their ears. Now, I don't need to leave loads, just a little bit. I'm going to do one more stitch through. Obviously the number of stitches will depend on the thickness of your thread, and make sure you're going through all the way to the back when you stitch. Okay, so now that I've stitched through a few times, I'm going to make a loop. So I've put this over my finger, looped it around the back and tied it through. I can do that again in case you couldn't see, because I was wobbling around too much. There we go, do that one more time, and then I'm going to push through to the back, tie a knot, like that, and then just go back through one more time just to make my ends neat,